we're in a slavery system. We're in a system where you can't tell the government, I don't agree with what you're taking from me. I feel like we've got slave masters to deal with. I yearn for the world where all we have to deal with is like some scammers trying to get your seed phrase. Like, please give me that world. Or shitcoiners doing good marketing to sell their utility. Like, I would love that world if that's all we had to deal with. We have governments on scale enslaving people to a wage, and they're telling them they're okay with it.
There was like 15 of us that would get over 1 billion views a month, and just all of the stuff we were posting about Epstein Island, right? About the bankers, about all these different things. If you were going up against an enemy that had almost complete control of the news, you would have to find a way to actually like get truth out to everybody to break that system down.
But I can tag you.
Or
All
just,
right.
just so I can retweet it. I'll go to your profile.
Yeah. Actually, we just went live. Welcome to the show, Craig LeBlanc, the doorman with the Bitcoin Daily Podcast with GMoney with 1776. Is it radio?
Rug Pull Radio, 1776.love is kind of my website. What up, Craig? Good to see you, bro.
Yeah, man. You know, I had a lot of followers that first time I had you on the show. They all followed you before they found me. And
okay.
They were all excited. Started telling me all about when they started listening to you and stuff. So I had some fanboys in my crowd.
I love it. There's so many cool, unique Bitcoiners out there where you get these different takes from. And look, I'm not the guy that's going to sell everybody on Bitcoin. And so, you know, if other people can, right, like the more power to them. You know, I've got a kind of a unique message from a lot of Bitcoiners. And so, you know, I think all of us have a role to play, and, you know, we can all kind of expand our, you know, wisdom in how we, you know, go into the future based upon these different views. And so, yeah, love it.
Yeah, it's you know, one thing I like about what you're doing, which obviously I am pushing myself in that way personally, is you know, you see all these tech guys just adding their talent and skill to it in addition to buying it. And you're like, what else can you do besides buy Bitcoin? You can mine it, you can run a node, but what about my talents and stuff? And so I'm no coder. But I've always loved communication. I've always been in sales. I've always done public speaking. And I'm like, well, I'll help get the message out. I'll be that part of Bitcoin. And that's obviously what you do. So maybe you can just start with giving us that backstory of, and I think I just tagged you, and at least I sent you I'm trying to think if you.
Yeah, I just retweeted it, I think, or shared it. Perfect.
Okay. I'm going to pin mine to the top. That helped a lot. There we go. But X is getting hammered right now.
Yeah, I've had a little issues with it, but it hasn't been too bad. I haven't been cut off completely. So
yeah, they cut me off this morning. They had a big cyber attack, supposedly from Ukraine, is what they're claiming is where the IP addresses were.
How funny is that? The Nazis in Ukraine, the ones that are getting free Starlink, are now attacking Elon. And so it is funny because I'll say this, like, there's a lot of, I want to say, domesticated Bitcoiners that think Zelensky is a good guy and that we should support Ukraine and all this other stuff. And they don't know anything about the biolabs in Ukraine. They don't know anything about the actual like Nazi regiments in Ukraine. And so a lot of Bitcoiners, while they don't trust our financial system, for some reason, right, they think everything on CNN and Fox News is real. And so they don't realize that the money printer funds all the propaganda. And so their brains are like, well, Bitcoin's good and like, fuck the banks. But like, no, we got to have our mainstream media news, and like Zelensky's a bad guy. And so I think, like, you know, they need to wake up to the fact that this world is not as not what it seems, you know, in that context. And so that's why we like to shed a little bit of light on some of those conspiracy theories, right? Because, you know, we do believe, you know, some of my message about a global kind of reorganization, reset, to where some of these players are working together, maybe Russia, Xi, Trump, Saudi Arabia, MBS, and so there's this kind of like this sovereign alliance, so to
Mm-hmm.
say it, to prevent worldwide thermonuclear war, but also bring about the end of the Rothschild banking system together. And so, yeah,
Man, I hope so. I
it's a
sure
unique
hope so.
perspective. So,
I like it, and it does make sense as far as, I mean, I think just the Bitcoin reserve is a signal in that direction because anytime you decentralize monetary power, that's gonna help those who have the centralized monetary power. And so why would Trump, who supposedly owns the printing press, or he's in charge of the nation that does, why would he all of a sudden put this, thing that you can't that's got limited supply as the backbone, or at least it looks like he's trying to set it up as the backbone of American, economy.
yeah, look, I think Russia has been through a pretty tumultuous history, with the Bolsheviks and, Operation Trust and what happened, back then with, all of their history. And so we have to look at a bigger picture here and not zoomed all the way in. Putin was a guy that kicked out a lot of the Rothschild bankers. And so,
Mhm.
if you follow that main signal, Bitcoin's like, oh, you're just a simp for commies and a simp for Putin. It's like, whoa, whoa, whoa. You guys are not like reading the tea leaves correctly. And so,
Mhm.
you know, we need to actually critically think about these different topics to see, why are we giving all this money to Ukraine? Ukraine was basically taken over through a, fake coup election. Zelensky's been an actor his entire life,
I
where
know.
the plot of his actual like acting career was to be like a fake president. It's like right in front of your face. He's cross-dressing, doing all these things, and his people are dying at an alarming rate, and they're sending people in there, and they won't even allow elections. They froze the actual elections in that country, and so
Yeah.
it's pretty interesting to see some of the domesticated takes from Bitcoiners. And a lot of them started with the jab. They were, some of the big names were supportive of not having full autonomy and making sure everybody was
I'm not familiar
vaccinated.
with that. The Jap what was that?
Well, yeah. What happened was that the whole lockdown,
Oh, yeah, I see.
right? And so people
Yeah,
were,
got it.
and so some of them were actually promoting that people should be forced to take poison and locked
Mhm.
down, and that didn't end up so well for a lot of people that took that. And so, we need
No,
to actually, and so this is kind of what my message, like, we should always have freedom and sovereignty at the forefront of everything.
mhm,
And we've been so domesticated over the years through permissioned system of licensing and fees and, taxation, inflation. And so we've been like defanged as
mhm.
humans to where we can't project any power. We can't really do anything. I mean, kinetically you can, but kinetically never really gets anywhere as far as a revolution. Those always get shut down
Right.
pretty quick. And in this day and age, we're not going to win a kinetic, battle in this thing. And even if you did, you're just going to have power, centralized again in that scenario. And so
You're not
this
fighting
is
the real enemy there anyway. You're just fighting.
right, exactly, right. The enemy is the hidden enemy, is the banker
Mhm.
enemy. And now we can wage war directly on the bankers' doorsteps instead of, the bankers actually funding both sides and destroying things, and then they get
Mm.
enriched in the end, and we all lose. And so, putting sovereignty and freedom first is what Bitcoin is all. And thank God, Bitcoin can't be like compromised to ever give in to
Mhm.
basically bow down to these other systems. It's
Right.
it's
The
it's
social
coded in a,
engineering.
yeah, it's coded in a way to where you really can't, like, you can't make it bend to the rules. You can't tax it, right? You can't
Mhm.
confiscate it. And so, no matter what, even if you had people that would cave, like, Bitcoin doesn't care, the human
Right.
element is like, well, we don't really care how popular, how cool you are, how much, clout you have. You still can't affect the network being a free sovereign system, parallel system that is just unfuckwithable.
Where do you think this rule following culture stems from? And I feel like it starts like in kindergarten, but um, it just seems like it's taken over, especially in the masculine population. Like even in the Bitcoin population, first people come in and they're just like, well, how do we follow the rules with Bitcoin? Can you help me on following the rules with Bitcoin? Because my accountant can't help me out with that. And I'm like, there's just this need to just get in line, stay in line, follow rules. And gosh, I just don't feel like that's healthy. It's every masculine part of my body is like just repulsed by that. I
Yeah,
don't
it's
know.
funny. I think Bitcoin has kind of activated secret DNA from like these rebel souls that have come back to actually be like, wait a minute. I think we have amnesia, and we like forgot what it was
Mhm.
like maybe back in the day, to where we didn't bow down to the God Kings and comply with every stupid law that there is on the books. I mean, 99.9% of all laws are fake and gay anyway, written down from abstract power, God Kings that think if you are jaywalking, you should be fined, right? It's always
Mhm.
about your safety too, right? I mean, the default response is, look, this is about your safety. This is about your well-being. This is about making sure you're taken care of. And so they always use that safety, you know, argument to make sure you comply. And
Mm.
it does start from schooling. It's institutionalized to where you're led to remember a certain amount of things and then regurgitate it. And so that's not really learning, right? That's kind of like preparing you for a 9 to 5 work job, to where you're stuck in a cubicle. And that's not what humans were put on this planet to do, right? We're creators, we're thinkers, we can do all these beautiful things, and we've been basically, herded like livestock, if you want to put it, into these centralized systems. And then it just kind of carries on through corporate America. Corporate America is a disgusting cesspool of obedience, compliance, and these weird political arguments and takes. And I was in the corporate world for 20 years, and it
Mm.
was absolutely disgusting, to where you saw people that would do things because they had power or they had clout over people that had really good ideas, that were wanting to look outside the box. And so,
Mm.
corporate America is a domesticated playground,
What
and then,
part of corporate America were you in?
so I was in the tech sector. I was
Mm.
in computer chips. I was in software. I did sales and account management for a pretty long time. It was fun. It was great. And we did a lot of great things. And I was with a smaller company towards the end, which made things easier. But then we got sucked up by a VC. And
Uh,
then the VC was like Joe Biden took over the company.
oh my gosh.
And he just ran it kind of into the ground. And you're like, yeah, I just can't deal with this. And so
Mhm.
that was my out, right? Like, that was my out. And this is when I really went heavy into Bitcoin and training and learning and teaching people, because I had that technical background, to where not only could I talk about it in a way that was maybe simpler for people to understand, but I could also teach them the technical ways of how to get a hard wallet, how to do a multi-sig, right? How to
Mhm.
do all these different transactions so people could be safe and secure and be sovereign. My whole thing about teaching people how to Bitcoin is being sovereign, right? Because leaving your Bitcoin on an exchange, or at the bank, it's just like living it at the bank, right? You still have that permissioned trust system, and humans over time, have eroded their trust in institutions, to
Mm.
where we get the rug pulled over us, and then you get bailed out by the government, taxpayers, right? You're getting bailed out by the taxpayers, not the government. And so you just see this never ending streak of compliance and bailouts, and nobody ever goes to jail, right? Like, who went to jail during the 2008, 2009 crisis? I don't
No,
think
but
anybody.
just yeah, I don't think anybody did. Well, that one guy, maybe
Maybe
Lehman
one
Brothers.
guy, right? One
Yeah.
guy, but they stole from everybody else.
Mhm.
And that, like, that like constant, cycle of theft has to end. And we're finally in a position where we can end it, which is
Yep.
is this beautiful thing. But and I'll even kind of take a dig at the churches. I hate to say it, right? But
Mhm.
if your church is, basically taking a 501c3, you're a warden of the government, because you're taking the tax-free status to ensure, right, that you're not allowed to talk about certain things.
Right.
And it comes back to a lot of these different things, where how many times have we been domesticated over the years, to where people refuse to stand up, they refuse to get aggressive in a peaceful way, so to say, of non-compliance. And really, Bitcoin is a revolutionary non-compliance to the systems that are controlling us now. And so that's why we got to take it back to 1776, but this is digital 1776, to where we're not taking muskets and shooting at people. We're digitally saying, we're going to secure our energy in a parallel system that is unconfiscatable, permissionless, and trustless. And we're just not going to comply with your stupid rules anymore. Like, I'm no longer going to file my federal taxes, because I'm not going to pay my taxes to pedophiles. And I'm not going to support a criminal syndicate that basically takes my energy and uses it to hurt other people,
Mm.
And we need to go back to self-governance. And self-governance was the initial framework of the Constitution, right? I think the anti-federalists had it correctly to where we need a small federal government, a very lean federal government, and let the states battle it out. Let governments compete. Let governments become service providers to figure out like who's got the best method of governance.
Mm.
And really, we're living in a shitcoin republic, a shitcoin democracy, to where we allow 300 or 1,000 people to control 330 million. Well,
Yeah.
not even that. You only have to get 51% of those 1,000 people to actually collude.
Well, what
And
do you think
then,
about what Musk is finding out that even these 1,000 people have very little control over what's beneath them because they literally ignore them. This deep state bureaucracy has grown so powerful that it's almost like an imperceptible layer of elected officials, but most of government is unelected officials.
well, we can take it back to Reagan back in 1982. His executive order 12369 actually called the Grace Commission. So he actually put together a commission to figure out where all federal tax dollars went. And at the end of that, they calculated that actually 0% of it went to any public good. And this is back when the
Wow.
deficit was under, I think, $1 trillion. And they found out that most of the money of federal tax receipts actually went to pay interest on the debt. And if you think about if that happening in like 82, well, you're like, well, wait a minute. If that's happening back then and our debt is now 36 trillion, like,
Mm.
how are we even getting the money to pay the interest on the debt at this point? And, everybody knows the interest on the debt is larger than the military budget. And so, I think Elon was talking about that today, but, this has been going on for almost 50 years at this point. And, I don't know how much longer, how much more people are going to take before like, you know what? This government has actually become harmful to freedom, right? To sovereignty, to, the original framework of what, it means to be an American. And so we have the power, and it's
Mm.
funny, like, we've always had the power, but like, we just forgot like how to play the game, and
Yeah.
and now we have this beautiful, weapon gifted to us that we can actually fight back in a
Mm.
meaningful way.
Maybe answer this question for my audience, but and I speak on this a lot, but if you don't have the right to property, you don't have rights. And so why don't you speak on the value of having a property right? How that backs
But
all of it.
yeah, I mean, I think the framers got something wrong, right? It was life, liberty, pursuit of happiness, where it probably
It
should
was
have been
changed, I thought. I thought it was right to life, liberty, and property, and then they changed it at some
changed
point.
it. Yeah, I mean, you can have the pursuit of happiness in there, but property definitely needs to be included in that equation where they kind of just left it out. But it comes back to a allodial title, right? Because you actually don't own anything in this
Mhm,
entire world because the ownership is always subjugated depending on who controls the ledger. And we've
mhm.
never had a ledger that was trustless or permissionless before. And so if you own a house, if you own a car, if you own these different things, if you don't pay the tax on it, they
You
just
see
take
who
it
owns
from
it.
you.
Right.
Yeah, and so you really don't own anything. And so property tax itself is unrealized capital gains,
Mhm.
and it's just theft over a period of time that increases. And what happens is, people get old, they die, their house goes up, and they just don't really care because people inheriting are getting all the money or whatever. But now we have something that you can't, put an inheritance tax on, right? I can take all my Bitcoin, put it in a private key, and then just hand that to my kids, and you just
Mm.
eliminate the equation for inheritance tax. And so we need to fight starting back. We need to start like actually DDoS attacking their enforcement bureau, right? Because well, Trump's made it a lot easier for us. He
Right.
fired half the IRS, right? He closed down all the different IRS locations that were helping people file their taxes, and he put the rest of the IRS on a 90-day leave,
Wow.
which takes you through April 15th.
Mhm.
So you may not want to actually file those taxes because, actually filing them and signing on the dotted line kind of requires you that you've agreed to their voluntary, right? There's no law actually for it. It's a voluntary tax system. And so we
Mhm.
need to like look at ways to bring them back to the negotiating table,
Mm.
because they're spending our money. Like everybody's seeing the corruption in Doge, right? And we just, the taxes automatically come out of our paycheck. We have no say in what they're doing with it. And let's be honest, Congress are just employees of the Federal Reserve because the Federal
Mhm.
Reserve prints money and they pay their employees with it. And really, that's their energy. That's their energy source. They're printing energy and they're stealing from us at the same time. And so we don't really have any representation, right? Because the number of representatives were frozen, right, in 1929 to 435. And so we have this like inflationary effect from our direct democracy, or not even a direct democracy, our republic, to where our voice, right, gets diluted over a long period of time as soon as there's more people born, right? The population just grows to, and the original framework of the Constitution was for 13 states and 4 million people. And now we're at 50 states and 330 million people. And so, like gold, it doesn't scale. That framework on paper does not scale. Now, I don't know if this means we need 10,000 congressmen, or, we kind of, somehow merge this digital, physical world in a, kind of a declaration of independence, a constitution tied in cyberspace, to where now the rules of law are kind of encoded behind a wall of energy.
Mhm.
And then we can just comply with those. Um, but there's different ways to talk about this. But in essence, we have a small group of people controlling, right, the rest of us. 501 people can control 330 million. And if you think about that, that's Ethereum, that's Ripple,
Yeah.
that's a
Oh,
shit
yeah.
coin,
Right.
right? It's the same architecture. And so you don't have to be a Bitcoiner at this point to just understand the architecture of like what a representative republic looks like. And that's not even close to becoming a
Right.
representative republic,
Well,
and
I think eventually when all property rights move into the Bitcoin ecosystem, so just think of all property moving into the Bitcoin ecosystem, then they will be left to govern the remaining property rights. So we're literally siphoning power and property out of their system as we exit into a digital ecosystem that they don't have property rights on. The only person that has property rights in Bitcoin is the person who holds the keys. Period. Like you have no other rights. If you don't have those keys, you're not getting to those tokens or those coins. All right. So tell us about. I wanted to hear about the founding of this radio channel that you have. Like, what got you into that? As
yeah.
choosing
So
communication as your where you're going to plant your flag or what you're going to do for the Bitcoin ecosystem.
yeah, it's funny. So I never started this back in the day to do this actually. So I'm an old school Ron Paul guy.
Me too.
I'm an old school in the Fed, voted for Ron Paul every time. I wrote his name in, even when he
Yeah.
wasn't on the ballot.
I was a presidential delegate for Louisiana when they threw our president on the ground, and then the next one, and the
Dude,
next
that
one
that whole thing was wild how they
in
stole it from him, because he
Shreveport.
was gaining momentum in that whole
Mhm.
electoral process.
We had, I think we have 176 presidential delegates from 6 or 7 districts in Louisiana. Ron Paul swept 5 of the 6. And then we went up to Shreveport to write in Ron Paul's, who's Louisiana wants to send. And the Republican Party of Louisiana basically stole it from us, wrote in Romney, and just basically said, y'all don't count. And we were all the duly elected presidential delegates, and the state troopers were in there throwing the guys on the ground, putting them in handcuffs. I'm like, this is the Republican Party now. This isn't. It
So
was
I'm
terrible.
actually can you like explain that story real quick, how the delegate works? Because
Oh,
like in essence, like you guys are like proof of stakeholders that are like, you know, basically casting the votes for everybody else. And so you have
yeah,
these like superpowers, but like they
yeah.
didn't even let you use your superpowers. It's proof of stake like on steroids.
So I learned the hard way. Every state has its own rules. Who makes up the rules? You go join the Republican Party of Arkansas. I'm in Louisiana, so Republican Party of Arkansas. That Republican Party just basically just makes up rules, and their rules were the real power resides in last year's Republican Party. The delegates is literally just guys show up and give a suggestion. So when you go vote for your delegate, your presidential delegate, and let's say I ran for it, I ran, so they voted for Craig LeBlanc, and I got to basically say, I told him if I win, I'm going to vote for Ron Paul, but I can go up there and vote for whoever I want. Well, turns out when I go up there, even my vote doesn't count. They just take it as a suggestion. They can write in whoever they want.
Talk
And
about proof of stake to the max. That's insane.
And every state is different. You can go to the neighboring state. Well, what are y'all's rules? Republican Party, Democratic Party? They're all different. There's not. They're maybe similar in name only. That's about it.
So really, like, they don't have to actually, cast a vote that is in support of the will of the people.
No, I don't know.
So voting is literally fake and gay, right? The elections are fake and gay. 2020 was stolen. That Joe Biden never got 81 million votes. And, our entire election system is fake. Now they let Trump win, obviously, but,
I don't know how that happened.
Yeah, I don't know how that happened either.
I literally thought after seeing the last one and eyewitnessing in Shreveport, Louisiana, what happened with Ron Paul, I was like, there's no way they're going to let him win.
Yeah. But
I said, they're either going to kill him or they're going to steal the race. And they tried both.
Right.
Twice.
Yeah. And it was kind of wild. It was kind of like, oh, they just let Trump in. And, we got to understand too, like, we're fighting this 1,000-year-old enemy to where, these plans are made in decades. And even if Trump got in, maybe they're trying to crash the financial system on him right now. Right. And they're like, let him come in and crash the markets on him and see, who knows, right? A lot of these plans are made over, 10, 20, 30, 40, 50 years. And so these sons of bitches are very patient, Craig. So patient, so we got to be very creative and methodical about how we fight them. But, we're what, 96% of the Bitcoin network has been mined. We've got America as a Bitcoin superpower. Trump is going huge for this, and Trump at Nashville said Bitcoin is about freedom, sovereignty, and coercion from the state, really about, not forced coercion from the state, which is that last part of it is huge, because he's saying, like, look, you guys can fight this from this abstract power of coercion that your government is forcing upon you. And, I thought that was a very bold move because I predicted Trump was a Bitcoin maximalist from years ago. Okay.
Yeah.
And so back to the story, how I got started. Again, big Ron Paul guy, big gold guy, big in the Fed guy. I was like, none of this is getting fixed unless you fix the Federal Reserve, right? Preach from Jekyll Island, that whole thing. And then, I was in Las Vegas for the Route 91 shooting. Okay. And so I saw firsthand, like, false flag, conspiracy, whatever you want. Like, the story they were telling on the media is not what happened. I was there. I was on ground level. My buddy got shot in the leg, the whole deal. And, like, when that came out, like, I always knew 9/11. There's something weird about it. Some of these other Gulf of Tonkin, you hear about these stories, but you're not sure how credible they are because there's so many clowns in the conspiracy space that one of them may tell you like 90% of the truth. And then the last 10% is like totally fake and gay. And so it's really hard to follow, kind of like the alien stuff. Yeah. But like in this instance, I knew what they were saying was fake because I was there.
Right.
And so I go down all these rabbit holes, right? Like rabbit hole after rabbit hole after rabbit hole. And I'm in Bitcoin at like 2016, but I'm in it because I'm like, oh, number go up, bro. Like, I'm buying all the shit coins. I'm like, let's make some money, right?
Because the same thing.
Yeah, like, this looks cool. I actually got rug pulled on my first transaction because I was trying to buy expensive whiskey. This guy had a fancy website. I sent him like 0.8 Bitcoin and never got my whiskey. So most expensive bottle of whiskey I never got, but this is back when, Bitcoin was like $300-400, so it wasn't that big of a deal. Yeah. And then I start going down all these rabbit holes, and I find this thing called Q, right? QAnon or whatever it was called, right? QAnon, the whole thing. And I was there from probably like the first couple of drops. So this entity didn't start dropping until like October 28th, 2017. Okay. And so the Vegas thing happened October 1st, 2017. So it was like within 30 days, this entity started posting. And look, there was a bunch of fake stuff. There was a bunch, and I'm not trying to convince anybody, like, it's kind of like math. Like, if you don't see the math behind it, like, I'm not trying to convince you, like, it's kind of like Bitcoin, right? Like, if you don't believe me or like don't understand it, I don't have the time to tell you, kind of thing. But like, what I can tell people is that if you look at these drops over a large period of time, what you'll see is there's this mathematical anomalies to where the coincidences that keep showing up are basically like the same mathematical, chances of like guessing a private key, right? And so like, it's not like, trust me, bro. It's like literally like it's math.
Right.
Like, someone knew certain things were going to happen in the future, and they were able to tell you or foretell. Now, there was a lot of disinformation. Don't get me wrong. They got a lot of stuff wrong, But I think, some of that stuff being wrong was on purpose. If you're putting stuff on a public board and you're fighting an enemy in this psyop world, right? We're all fifth generation. This is a psyop. You're going to force the enemy to maybe make moves they didn't want to make ahead of time based upon someone maybe dropping information that was scary to them, And so if you look at it from that perspective, I started following this and I was like, you know what? This sounds too good to be true. And I was like, Bitcoin, I'm like, that sounds too good to be true. And so you're kind of like weighing both of these things. And I'm like, I wonder if they're connected because, if you're going to like arrest all these people, expose the corruption, they called it the Great Awakening. And if you're going to actually provide something for us in the future in this new free sovereign world full of like peace and abundance, it sounds like one of those, liberal, dreams, right? Of like everyone's, puppy dogs and ice cream and rainbow flags, right? All that stuff. And so you kind of like, well, my discernment was pretty hard because I'm like, you're not going to, that's not going to happen unless you actually fix the money. And then I started really getting into the Bitcoin stuff and going, wow, like, there's no central issuer. It's anonymous. It's totally decentralized, right? It's used with military technology. You're like, oh, that's really interesting. And then the Q stuff, Q is the actual highest level of clearance in the Department of Energy. And you understand, Bitcoin is energy, and so you get this weird kind of like overlap because Trump, it alluded to the fact that Trump was involved in this. And, there's proof that he was based upon even his own comments. And so it's just interesting how these things kind of forge together. And now we have Trump coming back into office and we have, him becoming this Bitcoin maximalist. And so I tied some of that stuff together through what's called the Covfefe dig. So I recommend if you guys like rabbit holes and want to look at different things, that's why I'm wearing these Pepe the Frog shirts. It's a lot to do with that. But it's a fun little experiment of how you can actually combine Bitcoin, Trump, Q, Pepe the Frog, JFK, Tesla into this wild conspiracy about Trump tweeting Covfefe. And it's a fun rabbit hole, but like it's all like on the block, it's all open source. And I think it speaks for itself, right? It's don't trust me, right? It's go look at it yourself, bro.
Now, what does Pepe represent?
So, I mean, Pepe, it goes deep, right? It kind of goes in back to biblical times and the pharaohs where, they talked about how, a plague of frogs would actually destroy them if you didn't let their people go. And the Israelites, it was about a story about bondage, what we're in today, really about, that whole story. And, Pepe the Frog represents this meme of the, kind of this military memetics is what I call it. And, in cutting through the propaganda, because, 95%, I think, of all of our news and entertainment comes from like 6 corporations. Now, the Q operation was to disseminate information to a lot of independent journalists because, back in the day on Twitter before we got banned, there was like 15 of us that would get over 1 billion views a month. And just all of the stuff we were posting about Epstein Island, right? About the bankers, about all these different things, to where it created this big movement of conspiracy talk, right? Back in the day. And so if you think about like, if you were going up against an enemy that had almost complete control of the news, you would have to find a way to actually like get truth out to everybody to break that system down. And, the memes actually work in a way of kind of like a virus, so to say, because like you can post a meme of like, Hunter Biden smoking crack. You don't have to you don't have to explain the story of it. You don't have to go in and like, what are all the details? Like, here's the president's son, like smoking crack, and you can make memes about it. Right. And it just like, then the internet goes wild. They can't really like, censor it because it's just an image, but like, you're like, wow, the president's son is smoking crack. Like, and then he's got like these underage girls and like Joe Biden is sniffing children. And so like all these memes that came about, like kind of started with Pepe. And he was a big kind of person back on we call them the boards, the 4chan and 8chan boards, and where people would actually like make these rare Pepes to where they said, oh, this one's super rare because like no one's seen it before. It was just an image like, on a message board. And like, oh, mine's even more rare. And they would just, but then it ended up becoming like people were making like Nazi symbols with Pepe. And anyways, all this thing starts to happen. Trump then tweets himself as Pepe the Frog on October 13th, 2015. And then after that, like Hillary Clinton launches a campaign to call Pepe the Frog a hate symbol, and then there's this huge pushback from, people that are in the community to be like, no, this is not what's happening. And anyways, it brings all of this attention to this Pepe the Frog character. It like goes absolutely viral. And then this one anonymous person goes, you know what? Like, I'm actually going to mint rare Pepes on the Bitcoin blockchain. And this is where this gets special because, back to your thing earlier about property, I do believe tokenization is going to be actually massive, and it's going to happen on Bitcoin in a layer 2 environment, of course. And so there's only one layer 2 environment that actually has an immaculate conception like Bitcoin, and that's Counterparty. And so for those that aren't familiar with Counterparty, it was a layer 2 system that started back in 2014. And this open source protocol allowed you to create these vanity names that were like anchored in layer 1 through op return. Now, it did create this shitcoin called XCP because, Bitcoin can't do escrow and some other different things. And so it was also kind of like an anti-spam fee, but this token was created by burning real Bitcoin. So there was no ICO, right? There was no pre-mine. It was literally whoever sent Bitcoin to this provably unspendable burn address got rewarded with this token. And so it was really decentralized, immaculate from the get-go. Caitlin Long was part of the project back in the day. And so they made it in the same kind of essence of Satoshi. But if you go back to your Michael Saylor cap and put on your engineering thermodynamics cap on, you know that energy cannot be created or destroyed. And so burned Bitcoin isn't destroyed Bitcoin. Anybody can go look and see there's over, 2,140 coins sitting there in this burn address. And so it's kind of like an energy transformation, right? It's actually Bitcoin in a sense. And so it's a special protocol, I think. I think it's really one that people don't know much about because it was really never centrally listed. And so you have all these frogs being minted back in 2016. And so you get some ones with some really interesting coincidences. Okay. And that's kind of where this rabbit hole goes. And then, I've got what this guy over here, it's called the Games of Trump. That's kind of one of the biggest like proofs that's out there. And I'll let people go like look for it on their own, but go research the Covfefe dig. It's on Substack through Badlands Media. And then my Substack is Pappy G45. So PAPPY G45.substack. And that's my name because I got ripped off and the whiskey I wanted was Pappy Van Winkle. So I was like, so my old name is Pappy G. Yeah. And I'm like,
right.
I was a big whiskey guy back in the day, kind of switched to tequila, but that's another conversation.
Yeah.
So anyways, that started. And then that kind of let me foretell this amazing future of the orange man becoming an orange coin maximalist to kind of where we're at today. So it's a super fun story. It's a super fun rabbit hole. And I think these Bitcoin NFTs, like a lot of Bitcoiners shit on NFTs. I get it, bro. I get it. These aren't Ethereum. It's not Solana, right? I'm not, this isn't some like centralized ICO pre-mine. This is literally a scalable layer 2. And don't believe me, we got Saylor talking about tokenization right now too. And if you think about, what they're doing with Larry Fink, trying to digitize equities and this other thing, Wall Street's a major problem that I think a lot of Bitcoiners don't take into consideration. And 75% of Wall Street's actual revenue comes from securities lending.
Yeah.
Patrick Byrne spent $30 million proving that Goldman Sachs, right, actually does this. It's called securities lending, which basically is rehypothecation of equities. So they're taking your stock and they're lending it to people, naked short sellers, hedge funds, and they're lending it 20 times over, right? So they can naked short sell the hell out of whatever company they want to destroy, like GameStop, where we know the float was actually larger than the number of shares issued. So there's no transparency, right, for any of this.
Now, what do you think when you say Wall Street's a problem? Do you feel everybody has the right to use, or if Bitcoin allows you to come in? I mean, how do you keep somebody out of Bitcoin? I know a lot of times Bitcoiners are opinionated, but it's like, well, what's your plan on stopping whomever wants to show up at an exchange and buy Bitcoin from buying Bitcoin, even if they're with somebody that you disagree with? I mean, your enemies can use Bitcoin just like
you mean like a BlackRock or something?
BlackRock, a government, someone with a printing press.
Yeah, yeah,
You know?
it's an important question, for sure. Now, a lot of this, plan that we talk about or that we're reading the tea leaves of, there were some executive orders that are pretty strong out there,
Mm,
okay? Some of those executive orders, like Trump's EO 13818, which Joe Biden, weirdly enough, kept extending,
mm,
is one that blocks property of human rights abuses. Okay, and so that goes to governments, that goes to NGOs, right? That goes to I think what's being exposed with USAID, but
mm,
it even goes down to the government level of government entities. And so, if you have these different NGOs, corporations that are involved in serious human rights abuses, or whatever it may be, maybe this thing of Trump's executive order seizing Bitcoin, right? Funny enough, it wasn't about buying, it was about seizing. And, I still don't think we have any, you know, uh, like actual satisfaction with what happened in 2008, 2009 with
mm,
Big Pharma, with Moderna, with Pfizer, with all these, with Fauci. And so maybe, just maybe, there is something to this Q plan to where it looks like things are getting mopped up. Elon's coming in there and mopping up all the
mhm.
corrupt and waste and abuse. Cash Patel's leader of the FBI. And so we have some pretty strong people in there that may do, some of these things that that entity talked about. This may be some kind of a military plan to where it's not just about trusting me, bro. It's about, understanding the tea leaves as things go through this, but
Mhm.
done in a way that doesn't, break too many things as we go along, right?
Yeah.
Like, you know, Bitcoin not getting ETF approvals until, everybody, humanity got a 15-year head start on,
Yes.
all the governments and corporations. And so
Right.
it's been, I think, distributed, right? At least
Like you said,
some degree,
96%'s been mined, and so it's in the hand of original Bitcoiners, well, except for what's, ETFs and people that come in, but if you've held this long, that's pretty solid. Um,
yeah. And so, we'll see what happens with all that, with all this exposure of the corruption. And I think we're just getting started.
yeah. Yeah, I think we are just getting started here, and I to me, this feels like a new 1776. This feels revolutionary. This feels like, the real enemy is in full-blown panic attack. I mean, I own a Tesla. A lot of my friends do, and, as far as getting swastikas painted on your Teslas, they're burning Tesla charging stations down. It's like, when you come after them, they don't, I know we all like to say, not in a non-violent way, they're not being nonviolent towards us.
Right? Yeah. I love my Tesla. I used to be a Tesla hater too, by the way. I was like, I'm never going to do an EV. And
What changed you?
I mean, just driving one. Holy cow. It's like little
That's all
spaceships.
that's what I tell people. I'm like, "You hate what you don't know. You
Yeah.
sit in one and drive it, and it will convert you."
They're not going to the gas station anymore, letting it self drive you. I'm sorry, but that technology is absolutely
Oh,
amazing. And, if you think about, the Department of Energy, do people know that actual Trump's uncle was the first person to actually get the Nikola Tesla files? So,
what?
yeah, so Trump's
No.
uncle, John G. Trump, who
Mhm,
was a professor at MIT, Jason Laurie went to MIT, we know Michael Saylor went to MIT. So you have John G. Trump, who was at MIT at the time,
mhm,
one of the longest serving professors, which he actually talked about in his speech in Nashville. Um, he was the first person to get all of Nikola's Tesla's cabinets, boxes of his inventions when he passed. And I think he worked for the FBI, or he was at something with the FBI. It said there was nothing. We talked about, I think, some super weapons or stuff that were, they talked about and everything. But him and Ford talked about energy currencies.
yep,
They
I
talked
remember
about
that.
different technologies, and it was very important for Elon to actually get the name Tesla. And now we see, Tesla, we see Elon sending rockets and like landing, and he's got cars, and he's got the Boring Company, but he's also like the top gamer. He's also tweeting every 5 minutes, and he's
Mhm,
also now cleaning up Doge. And so he's kind of like
mm,
this, almost like this cartoon character. It's
yeah.
almost kind of like there's no way one man could do all of this, right?
The power of
And
autism, baby.
yeah, he's making robots, and you're like, Oh
That's the
man, there's
superpower. I think the biggest superpower coming from America is being built right now in Austin, Texas. There's 1,000 of them walking around. When that sucker we talk about cheap labor pools and that being an advantage in industry. There will be no cheaper labor pool than what will be printed out of Austin, Texas that looks like a human, that thinks like a human. And if you don't believe me that they're thinking like human, go find any of us Tesla people and ask us to allow you to drive. You'll be like, it has arrived. The
oh yeah.
human intelligence level, the decision making. Okay, so have you noticed the difference week to week of the improvement of this self-driving?
Oh yeah. Yeah, when I
Like
first got it, it would always like hug the left lane and like making turns was like really I had the Cybertruck, whatever. So
yeah,
making the turns was really I'm like, I would definitely watch it.
yeah,
But over time, like it passes people, puts on the blinker, goes around thing, it sees
yeah,
traffic ahead of it, and it's like, okay, this stuff. Like I even was coming on a street in full self-driving mode, and there was a big like concrete truck or something in my
mhm,
lane. And it actually looked on the other side of the road, oncoming traffic, and it
uh,
went around the concrete truck into
what?
the opposite lane and then got back over,
No way.
knowing there was no cars coming on the other side. And like I was like ready to take over, but I was like, oh, let's test it. So I always try to like test it in certain scenarios where I'm like, oh, let's see if it'll figure
Right.
this out. Of course, it did like run like into a different lane once when it was raining instead of like
Yeah,
being a
it's
left
not
being a
perfect.
being in a left turn. I was like, wait a minute, what are you doing, bro?
Yeah.
It kind of got faked out by a turn not too long ago. So I was like, okay. But it's amazing technology. And if you think about it, the cars they've kind of made us drive for the last 50 years, they're just like putting
Oh my
lipstick on a
gosh.
pig. There's not much right
No,
innovation. It's like, oh, you have Bluetooth now, right?
it's
Oh, you
plan
have
out
like
the
an
weapon.
extra cup holder.
The greatest engineering feat of these last engineers that worked in the automotive is to how to make a part break exactly at the
Yeah,
4-year warranty mark.
it's crazy,
We just
right? They
call it
game they
fall
almost
apart at
gamed it
100.
out.
Yeah, they did. Like, "This piece of plastic will crack at 50,000 miles."
And so I think really what we're seeing is a slow roll of this Tesla military technology in a way that doesn't disrupt too many
Mhm.
existing, things. And so we're kind of in this phase change in engineering, right? We're like we're switching, we're parallel switching, but if we do it too fast, right? People die, people
Right.
things happen, a lot of people get hurt.
Yeah.
But if you do it in a way that like allows people to adapt, I think that's what we're living in right now. It really seems that this technology couldn't have been given to us until we were able to actually take out the bankers, take out the Rothschild, to
Mhm.
actually provide this abundance for humanity that help us get into the next world, right? Next
Yeah.
next
I
millennium.
feel like I feel like we're almost being issued a bill of rights where we show up in America, we get off the sailboat, and it's like, "All right, I don't know where you come from, but over here, you can have weapons, you can vote, you have the right to speak, you have the right to property, you have the right to self-govern," and this is just like revolutionary tech, you could call it, because you never got that anywhere else. And now I feel like we have a new Bill of Rights. Okay, and this time you get Bitcoin, you get internet from the sky that can't be censored, you get platforms that can't be censored, you got Nostr, you got and it's we've never had any of this stuff before. We've never had Nostr. We've never had something like Starlink where you can literally get all the world information from a cell phone anywhere on earth. And we've never had Bitcoin that we can have our own property and we can, have commerce between us. This is literally revolutionary. All of these coming together at the same time. I just plus this new leadership that just seemed to just pop out the ground.
Yeah, and now we don't have to like export our freedom, we don't have to go invade another country to like, force communism out. Like everybody can look on their phone, hey, why aren't we doing what they're doing?
Yeah.
And so we're really going to be kind of exporting Americanism throughout the world digitally, right? You just
Oh, yeah.
pick up a cell phone and you're going to have internet access. And, I think we're going to have ways to free a lot of people, but it's also about building those incentive structures so that countries
Mhm.
can still remain sovereign, right? They can still be their own cultures and stuff. And we don't have to go in there with guns and stuff. Be like, no, like you have to do it this way. And
Right.
the old days of CIA, right? Like mop
We're
us
not
to where
nation building anymore.
yeah, right. We're just
Or
saying,
in
hey
that way.
guys, there's a better way.
Yeah.
Absolutely. So it is a beautiful thing. But again, you know, Trump can't do it all his own. We have to actually stand up. We have to take responsibility, and we have to really, you know, use this technology in the way it was meant to be used, right? Like, if you're given the ultimate Second Amendment, Fourth Amendment, First Amendment super weapon digitally, why not like
Mhm.
use it? What are we waiting for at this
You know,
point?
I like what you said about they can't do it alone. I feel like the and it's not just Trump and Musk. If you just look at the cabinet and how they have Tulsi and they have JD Vance and they have Kennedy, it's like, guys, all they've done is lay down suppressive cover fire for us.
Yes.
And when they're out of ammo, we better be ready to go because they're going to get steamrolled. Because the people they are shooting at have all the money and all the power, and pretty much all the guns too. So if the people are not behind this movement, and when I say get behind it, it's buy Bitcoin. In my opinion, that's if you're like, what can I do? I'm such a tiny person. Well, how about just exit the currency that they're diluting to hurt you? Because when they steal your dollars, they then wage war on you with those dollars they just stole from you. And so you're basically bleeding energy out of that system. I like how you said we gotta. What are we waiting for?
Yeah, no, I
Gotta
love that. I
know.
love that thing because you're right. We can't just let these people do it all for us. But they are building that momentum, right? They
Mhm,
are creating these incentives for people to like look at what they're doing. Like, you don't have to go like full psychopath like some of us do, like me, right? Like just
mhm,
buying Bitcoin and putting it on a cold wallet, like you're saying, is a revolutionary thing. It's actually the most revolutionary step an individual can take is
mhm.
buying Bitcoin and putting it on a cold wallet versus like voting, right? Like voting is only going to get you so far, as you've showed us through the electoral process, which is faking gay anyway, right?
Right. That's right.
um, and so, what that means is that it truly restores power to the individual.
Yep.
And, we are these digital soldiers. We're fighting under the same flag, right? And we can cooperate like involuntarily across the entire world and say, we're done with these tyrants. We are
Mm,
done bowing down to God kings. We are going to force the political class to back to the negotiating table with the people.
mm.
And, at the end of this, government becomes GoFundMe, bro, right? You
Yep.
want to go bomb people in other countries? You know what? Why don't you start a GoFundMe and you'll see how many tax-paying citizens actually want to support that.
Right.
And that comes back to self-governance. That comes back to removing taxation and implementing tariffs. And then people can, vote with their wallets if they want to buy certain products or goods, and that tax can go to the government. I guarantee you that even though some items may be more expensive, overall, your life is going to get a lot cheaper because they're going to end taxation and all the things that come with that. And it's going to suck. It's going to basically like suck the swamp dry. The,
Yeah.
the swamp will drain itself at that point.
Yeah, I think Bitcoin does I mean, we really could be demonetizing violence. And because when you can kinda defang the bully, that's you're basically taking all the power out of the bully because he can no longer steal. So then he kinda goes away because there's no one left to prey on. And so as long as you are participating in being the easy targets for the government, that's why they're here. They're here because we have a population of easy targets. When all we all become these hard targets because we've raked all our energy into something they can't confiscate, then the bullies go away because there's no business in being a bully anymore. It's not profitable to be a bully.
They have to negotiate with you, right? They have to say, look, I've got a really good idea. And it's like, prove it to me you have a good idea,
Yeah, get in line with everybody else that's seeking investment.
yeah, right. Exactly. Show me your business plan.
Show me your business plan or your charity. Get in line
Yeah.
with the churches or the people looking for investors.
Yeah, what's great about this is, we can do that, and I did that with actually one of these counterparty tokens where I did an NFT for the truckers in Canada, and I
Mhm,
wanted to prove like, hey, all these charities, they say 100% goes to the actual people, that it's going to. And remember, Elon Musk actually offered the World Health Organization $6 billion, and he said, if you guys open up your books, I'll give you $6 billion. And you know what they said? They said no. They denied the request, right? This is an entity meant to help
What
people refusing to open their books for $6 billion.
why would
Okay.
they do that? What could they possibly be hiding?
Exactly. And so I'm like, you know what? Let's see if we can do it with Bitcoin. Can I not a GoFund, not a like a give, send, go, GoFundMe. Those are all centralized entities. But let me see if I can create this NFT and I can um create a system where people that buy it, they can see the balance that is there, and then they can see my wallet sending it to the truckers. It's kind of like this just experiment I did.
Right.
And, I think we sent them over like, I don't know, 15 million, 20 million sats, something like that. So, back then the price was a lot less, but now that was, it's quite a bit of money, right? And if they hold it or whatever, but it was a really cool experiment because we could show everything was done on chain. We could show that there was full transparency. And, I think going into this new digital world, like reputation is going to be important. And there's going to be shysters, right? You're not going to get rid of all the shysters out there. But what's going to happen is it's going to not be profitable to be a shyster anymore. Like,
Yeah.
Are you going to risk your reputation for a short, like theft, right? A short Ponzi on people, or are you going to like live up to your word in this new system? And so that demonetizes violence as well, because the incentive structure for just working or doing things as a good person, the benefits way outweigh being a shyster and a charlatan.
Yeah.
So,
I maybe there's another word for this, but when I think theft, I think of somebody that maybe outsmarted you, they were a scam, maybe somebody strong showed up and actually wrestled your purse from you, kind of theft. But then there's like servants, like slavery, where the slave doesn't look at the master and say, "You're stealing from me." The relationship's different. Like there's this true shock. There's a crime involved. You can call authorities. You can go before the judges. The slaves never had that. Like they never looked up and says, "You know what? You whipped me last week, and I'm taking this to the court, and I will see you in court, son, for for beating me." But we're in a slavery system. We're in a system where you can't tell the government, "I don't agree with what you're taking from me." And I think that's different than theft. To me, theft is like, I wish that's all we had to deal with was thieves. I feel like we've got slave masters to deal with. I yearn for the world where all we have to deal with is like some scammers in like Pakistan trying to get your seed phrase. Like, please give me that world. That's the, or shitcoiners doing good marketing to sell their utility. Like, I would love that world if that's all we had to deal with. We have governments on scale enslaving people to a wage, and they're telling them they're okay with it. That's what I'm looking to kill. That's what I'd like to participate in destroying. The theft and scams, I mean, there's always going to be people trying to, take your wallet off the subway. I don't think that disappears.
no, 100%. You're absolutely right. And that's a good point. And it's funny because it's so hidden that people don't really realize it's theft, right? Our currency is very wrapped up into like this patriotic thing of the dollar being this
Mhm.
patriotic thing. But look, that wasn't instituted until 1913. We had almost 200 years before a central bank basically, took over this government. And so we can be Americans and think our currency is trash and it's slavery, but like people have to really understand that. And the funniest thing is that like a lot of people that support Trump, they don't get it. Like
Mhm.
you've got these Bitcoiners over here that like, they still want to pay their taxes, right? They still think, oh, we're hedging inflation, and they don't look at the freedom angle. But then you have these freedom guys that are like, into understanding Americanism and freedom and sovereignty, but they're like, this digital stuff, man, if I can't hold it, it's no good to me. And I'm like, guys, like you guys need to look in the middle because it's both. It's American, it's freedom and sovereignty, right? And it's this digital weapon for Bitcoiners, right? You Bitcoiners need to kind of wake up into the freedom aspect of like what's going on, how bad some of this stuff is, and so yeah, I think we're pulling as many as we can into the middle where I kind of fit because I'm like both sides of it to
Mhm.
where we can use that power, like you said, to end slavery, to end bondage, to end the 50-hour work week. That is complete bullshit, right? The end,
Mhm.
like they control every aspect of your lives. And not only that, right? Like, our kids grow up through institutions, and
Yeah.
then they're forced to be institutionalized in a sense. And it
Right.
is this system that we're trapped in, like you said.
Yeah. Yeah, and I think Bitcoin's gonna do its part. I'm glad to see what Trump and them are doing. I feel like they're buying us time. Just more time to get more people into this system, weakening this system that we're exiting. And if you don't understand it, and I think that's the part that me and you can play. I'd like to say that me and GMoney are kind of the communication division of Bitcoin. We're here to sound the alarm and say, the ship is sinking. Here's your life raft.
The Paul Revere's, right?
That's right.
The bankers are coming. The bankers are coming.
We finally found an exit hatch. Um, I love it. I love it. All right. So where can my audience find you? Where do you tell us your weekly routine as far as how you put information out, where you put it, and what you talk about?
Yeah, so every Thursday nights we're on Rumble, on Badlands Media called Rug Pull Radio.
Mhm.
We've had Michael Saylor on, we've had Fred Thiel on, we've had military generals on. So we've had quite the wide array of audiences to where we get into a lot of these things. And we're all about kind of being those psychotic maxi freedom loving Bitcoiners that aren't going to take shit anymore. Right? We're going to do our thing. We're not going to violate any laws of hurting people and stuff, but we're not going to comply anymore. Like
Mhm.
we're just going to opt out. Oh, you want me to do this? I like GoFundMe. Set a GoFundMe, bro. You want to support it? Set a GoFundMe. I'm going to opt out of taxation at every level. And I'm going to control my energy in a system that they can't take from me. And I think,
Mhm.
as this gets worse and worse, maybe through inflation or whatever, we've got to help Trump. We've got to help RFK. We've got to help, the Lutnicks and the Becents in this external revenue service and not agreeing to support the criminal syndicate of these NGOs that are literally like people are paying their taxes are literally like helping the people that are actually uh like trying to hurt them. Like you're actually funding your enemy at that point, because a lot of the stuff happens in America with these different things um that are meant to build division, meant to build hate. And so we can
Mhm.
all like win when we're united together in this thing. So I'm on X as GMoney Pepe. Again, the Pepe the frogs are, I think, a super important part of a lot of this.
Mhm.
um but my basic thesis is about Bitcoin as digital 1776. And funny enough, there was this military guide put out in January 2009, the same month and year as the Genesis block, and it was called the Counterinsurgency Guide. And this guide, funny enough, was nicknamed Coin. It's called the Coin, right? Coin strategy. And the Coin strategy is about a military civilian effort to simultaneously defeat and contain insurgency and address its root causes. Okay, and we know what the root of all evil is, right? It goes back to the,
Mhm.
to the biblical sense. So we know what the root of all evil is. Like in a current tense, we know that the bankers are really the root cause, not the politics, not the other stuff. And when you clean up the money, like everything else kind of naturally almost fixes itself in like this natural way.
Yep.
And so bit is digital, coin is counterinsurgency. This is literally the digital counterinsurgency. And insurgency is defined as like shadow government. And we have, military generals talking about the current state of insurgency being weaponized, right? A small group of people behind the politics are actually controlling the levers of power that allow them to do things like force the lockdowns, right? Force the printing of money, force the funding of all these NGOs. And so when you put it in that context, um, a insurgent and a counterinsurgent, they're battling over legitimacy,
Mhm.
and so legitimacy comes back to consent, right? Where does government get their powers? Well, from consent of the governed. And if we no longer consent, right, we're saying they're not legitimate. You are not legitimate in my eyes. And sure, if you're not legitimate, um, that's where we get to maybe a new declaration of independence of cyberspace.
Yep.
And I've wrote some interesting pieces on that as well, to where um, it's kind of like a Declaration of Independence mixed with, the Declaration of Independence of Cyberspace by John Perry Barlow, and you've got some soft war in there, right? Jason Lowry's soft war of Bitcoin as a weapon, and so you kind of merge these three things into this beautiful um, Declaration of Independence of Cyberspace. I think it really lends to the fact that we can all be sovereign individuals that have power, and that we can actually affect real change through this digital revolution.
I love it. I love it, man. Well, thank you so much for coming on the show. I think I'm going to be joining your show. It's on the 20th. I've got it on my calendar. I
Oh
think.
yeah. I think we have you on the calendar, and so looking forward to that one as well. And we'll get into. I want to pick your brain on some of that stuff too, and I want to explain the delegate process too. That's such a unique thing because people still think these elections are ran like in a fair way, and it's all fake. So
Yeah, yeah. It's I'll tell you what, if you want power, get in there and work for it. Get in
absolutely,
there and participate. No
proof of
one just
work.
gives you power. Exactly. Proof of work. Well, thank you so much, man. I look forward to coming on your show here in the next couple of weeks, and keep doing the work you're doing, man. Appreciate it.
Shade of light, Craig. Thanks, man.
Take care.
See it.
All right, so that was G Money. He came on my show, the last one I was working with. Love the work he's doing. I've had several of my Bitcoiners. Shout out to Morgan. He was a big fan of G Money and kind of got me hooked on his stuff. I love that guy's energy. I love how he's seems to just really carry this old American spirit. I think G Money was born maybe a couple 100 years too late. I feel like he would have been one of those guys just on the front line, charging the red coats. And so really proud to have men like him on the team, on the Bitcoin team, just bringing their fire and their passion into this ecosystem. And we need that. I think we really need a wake up call. Guys like him are really doing the hard work and coming back and reporting on what they find. I love his and that was so cool. I don't know if y'all caught that. Bitcoin, right? Bit is digital, and coin is short for oh shoot, what did he say? It was bit counterinsurgents. And so a digital counterinsurgents. So go back and listen to that part. And it reminds me because I heard him speak on that, and I really thought it was interesting back then. Um, that this is a counterinsurgency. It's a digital counterinsurgency, Bitcoin. And it allows you to basically just opt out of the system. It allows you to take control of your own property. It allows you to control your own energy and to keep your own energy. And so when they say it's an energy network, think about um, what generates property, what generates money. So your energy, your personal energy, your mental energy, your creativity, your hands, the sweat of your brow. You go to work, you give it to your employer, or you run your own business. You farm. Okay, you're amassing all this energy. You create something valuable, and you go into the market and you sell it. And what do you store this energy in? Something that you can use to buy other things later. This is where currency and money came about. But we've just had this money that can be diluted. That here you provided energy and a work. You had a proof of work. Okay. You brought your work to, say, the farmer's market, sold it to customers. And then you came back with their gold or their currency that they gave you. And you would hope that when you go to spend it, that at least that currency would hold the value. But now we're finding out that these governments have been printing money, devaluing our hard-earned money, and so now we've lost the purchasing power. So now the money that we worked hard for, that we traded our labor for this currency, we hold on to it and just for a little while, and we turn around and like, oh my gosh, this currency no longer buys what it used to buy because it's been diluted. It's kind of like if you have a Coke and somebody gives you a Coke, and then you come back and only to realize somebody's filled it half with water. So now it's diluted. And that's essentially what your currency is. All this thing that you're holding is being diluted constantly by the debasement, the printing of this of the currency. And so this is the power of having a fixed money supply. And I know we just gloss over that sometimes, even those of us that know it, and we just run right past that point. Only 21 million and decentralized. Like, whoa, 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 back up. Let's stay a little longer on this only 21 million. Let's not rush to the next thing Bitcoin does. Um, Having a fixed supply, that is that is one of the major superpowers of Bitcoin. That a government, another centralized authority, some elected official, some unelected official, some bureaucrat, somebody across the planet can't just arbitrarily just say, I think there should be 22 million and I get this extra million. And you're like, wait, we all had to work for this Bitcoin. We had to run miners, make a kilowatt of electricity, feed it to that miner, and then it spit out a little Bitcoin. And then if anybody else wanted Bitcoin, they had to buy it from somebody that mined it. That was the only way to get Bitcoin. So imagine the tragedy if someone could just arbitrarily come in and just say, "Oh, there's 30 million Bitcoin now, and me and my friends get this new 9 million," even though all of you have worked for it and bought it from people that worked for it. So how unfair would that be? But this is exactly what happens when you trade your work for a dollar and other people just print dollars. You have to trade your time, your work, your energy, your creativity, and you trade it for dollars. And then they take a piece of those dollars through taxation. But the biggest taxation is inflation. And it's from the constant printing. And this just steals purchasing power from you. So I love these topics, and I love guys like GMoney being the um, part of the communications arm. And we need more guys like him. So if you are a soon to be young GMoney, please get up here, start a podcast, start talking. Come on my show, come on his show. We'll help you out. It's pretty easy. You just get up and speak to what you're passionate about. And especially if you're passionate about Bitcoin. This is the new age of free speech, new age of freedom. This is a citizen journalism movement that we have. And right now we have a platform called X that is allowing free speech, thanks to its founder Musk, or excuse me, his new owner Musk, and we've got some others like Rumble. But I need everybody to start looking into Nostr more. I'm looking into it a lot more. I'm putting my stuff on Primal. I'm putting my stuff on Damus. I'm trying to get my content out there on these things. This is something you need to be doing and paying attention to, because you don't want to be listening to censored information. Censored information is designed to control you. It's designed to tell you what you should be thinking, not to encourage you to think. And so if you're trying to sort through all the information, but somebody's pulling out the information that might get you to change your mind, that's called censorship, right? And so you want to exist on and get your news from uncensorable platforms. Nostr is kind of like the Bitcoin of free speech. And so look into it. There's a lot of good works that's being built on it. And fortunately, a ton of Bitcoiners are building on this. And so go Bitcoiners, because they are always at the tip of the spear of setting man free and doing their part. There's a lot of guys, coders in the background that are working on this, lots of entrepreneurs. And like GMoney, there's a lot of content creators that are sounding the alarm and are exercising our right to free speech. So appreciate having him on the show. I will be here again tomorrow, 9 p.m. This is Craig LeBlanc, the doorman with the Daily Bitcoin Podcast. Y'all have an awesome night. Love y'all. See you tomorrow.
Welcome to the Daily Bitcoin Podcast, where knowledge meets financial freedom. We're here to break down the world of Bitcoin. No fluff, no hype. Just real talk about how this digital asset is reshaping the future of money. Inflation is stealing your purchasing power, but what if there was a way to fight back? Enter Bitcoin, the digital currency that empowers you to take control of your wealth. Ever wondered why your money doesn't stretch as far as it used to? At the Daily Bitcoin Podcast, we educate, inform, and inspire. From expert interviews to breaking news, we bring you everything you need to stay ahead in the Bitcoin community. Market updates, expert insights, real-world use cases, and practical tips to navigate the Bitcoin economy. So whether you're a seasoned Bitcoin investor or just getting started, this is your daily dose of Bitcoin wisdom. Don't miss out. Subscribe now, hit that bell icon, and let's break free from the chains of inflation, one Bitcoin at a time. The Daily Bitcoin Podcast, your gateway to financial freedom.